because you,
No.
you're
No.
always dynamic.
Recording and
Never
live
missed.
stream should be.
I'm just another player.
No, you're good. So,
All right, it's live streaming on YouTube.
Yeah, it's the
You can
cable,
see
it's
us?
the cable we
Yeah.
can't get.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, and I pushed, well, Mark, I pushed both multiple times, and nothing comes up on the screen.
I don't know, but we'll figure that out at a later time. No. There's nothing coming up on the left screen, that's here. It's dead.
Right. Live stream?
Yeah.
Okay.
Has this happened?
no,
I'm not,
there's always an issue. There's always an issue. with
right, and I'm not
the
sure right now, but,
I know.
technical difficulties. Thank you so much. We got the live stream going, but we've got to get the meeting started.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, hey, take care, have a good night. Bye.
The TV was on, but now it's not.
Now it's not.
It was on TV?
Okay. We have no way of monitoring that from here. I'd like to call the regular Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, November 7th, 2022 to order. It is 7:10 PM. Do we have call to order?
Jonathan Morhart.
Candy Perez.
Josh Kelly.
Todd Archelashi.
Glenn Albanesius. Steven Sedlak.
Linda Grappo.
Jack Bork. Candace Bouchard is excused. And I'd now like to present Troop 1027 for a presentation.
On now.
I'm Chaz, I'm the senior patrol leader of Troop 1027. Can everyone please stand and watch the presentation of the colors? Can everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Troop 1027 is joining us for their citizenship badge, correct? All right, welcome. Agenda review, does anyone have anything to, Andy?
Yeah, I mentioned this briefly, but 10A, the referendum on the waterworks. I guess it's just gonna be a presentation by the town manager and director of public works. But this is not something that's been requested to us from the Water and Sewer Commission, and nor has it been in their minutes or in their agenda coming up for tomorrow night, because I checked it. As you all know, water water and sewer are separate entities from us. The Board of Selectmen really has nothing to do with what their plans are or what they spend their money on. And the referendum that is being listed in here would be something that they would request, that we put the credit of the town of Winchester behind their loan. So I'm just a little concerned that we're a little out of, it seems like we're a little out of order in terms of the water and sewer request to us by putting all this information out there, but I just wanted to mention that on that. And I did mention it to Josh before this, and I don't know if the chairman is here yet, because I asked if the chairman from Water and Sewer was gonna be here, because this would be their loan just backed by us.
Josh, you have anything on that? No.
I don't. Thank you for the clarification, Candy. I think that, and I shared this with you a little earlier, I think it's important that information about a potential additional increase in the borrowing is important for you to all know about before you have to vote on it. I think that the Water and Sewer Commission are hoping, given the bid results, to try and move on this sooner rather than later, and therefore it was requested by me that this be on tonight's agenda. My understanding is that this will be discussed at tomorrow night's meeting. I can't speak to the agenda of the Water and Sewer Commission, but perhaps Jim Rollins and the chair of the Water and Sewer Commission can do that when they speak tonight.
Anything else?
Todd, if, under executive session number 12, if there's no anticipated action on our part, it might make sense to switch 12 and 13 so that the business part of the meeting is done and executive session comes last.
Everyone in agreement to move?
So moved.
Fair enough.
All in favor? So Selectmen's comments and reports will be in front of executive session. Can I have approval of the minutes for our regular meeting on Monday, October 17th?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Steve. Any discussion, corrections, or additions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Abstain.
5 in favor, 1 abstention. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes and may speak only once this round. Please give your name prior to your speech. Would anyone like to speak? Yes, just be careful of feedback with the 2 mics together.
Okay. My name is David LaPointe, 11 Hillside Avenue, Queen City, Connecticut. I'm here tonight speaking for those who cannot speak. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Lord, I'm asking you to make me an advocate for those who cannot speak for themselves, for those senior citizens who cannot be here tonight, for those disabled veterans who cannot be here tonight, for those disabled in our town who cannot be here tonight, for those who are veterans who cannot be here tonight, although there are 2 that I know of, John and I. Also, for the press who is not here tonight. Help me to speak for the young men and the young women who live with drug abuse. And thank God for these good young men who are here tonight, who are setting the example as good citizens. Give me courage to speak for the women who are neglected, and for those women who bring their babies to the altar of Baal and Malak, who in the Old Testament times were sacrificed to these demon gods. But the God of Israel prevailed, and the God of Israel shall prevail here in the United States. after tomorrow. Give me courage to speak for those who stand up, for those of my close circle of friends who are buried in mountains of debt. And I meet people in this town who are buried in mountains of debt and high taxes and high blight fines, which are over $100,000 for the majority of those who have not paid their blight fines. And they find themselves insecure. They find themselves depressed. They find themselves saying, what should I do? And I say to them, pray, and also seek out the good men and women who are elected here and who sit here tonight to do the right thing. So, I'm here tonight to ask you, and I know the good selectmen said they received the letter that I sent to them by the town manager, for the town manager and for you, to consider the amendments to fees for all of those people who I spoke about tonight. One of our selectmen, Jack Bork, Mr. Mayor, served in the press, and the freedom of the press puts the bureaucrats and puts the politicians on both sides in check. So therefore, the press should have access to documents, and if they need to get a copy up to $10, just like a senior citizen or a disabled person, you should grant that. And the good town manager, he somewhat agreed with me, but I know he said he put it before them and let the selectmen make their decision. So I think my time is up, but I hope you make the right decisions, and I hope you put it to the test and the proposal, and I hope it's bipartisan supported, because we need it. We need what the original intent was of the Freedom of Information Act under 1975, a good governor, Governor Ella Grasso, in her memory. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else wish to speak? Jerry?
Jerry Martinez, 117 Preston Road. Before I go into my comments, I just want to,
Can you use the mic, Jerry, please?
what's that? I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Thank you. I just want to acknowledge the 13 young men here to my left for getting to this level of scouting. It's important to have this type of meaning in your life, and it will carry you forward as you go out through your life, and you will be fine representatives of the town of Winchester and the United States. So thank you for your commitment, and hope that you have a long future ahead of you. So thank you. That brings me to my question to the Board of Selectmen and the town manager as to why we, as taxpayers, have to pay for public information that should, by default, flow freely from Town Hall. It's 2022. I assume all documents are created by town employees originate on a computer in a digital file format. I should not have to deal with the hassle factor of making an information request, only then to waste gas and time to retrieve a cost per page document, when a printer document format file, a PDF representing those documents, can be easily uploaded to the townofwinchester.org website to be searched or to be printed from my computer with zero cost to taxpayers and town hall staff. To focus your attention on this matter, I did a test and entered the following keywords in the townofwinchester.org search field: Contract United Public Service Employees Union. And if somebody's out there who's watching this, they can fact check me on this. One would expect that that search result would contain a historical list of all contract documents to be later viewed online, searched, printed, or downloaded. It was troubling that nothing related to employee contracts was returned. I also did a search to simplify that by just making it union contract. And I did get one document that represented the increases for employees, four-page document from 2020. Unfortunately, that's just one document out of many that the town hall could be producing for the benefit of the people who live and work in this town. It's important that folks who live and work in Winchester trust the actions of the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and the staff. And by using technology, which we already have and we've already paid for, to encourage open government is the very first step. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else like to speak this round? There will be another round later in the meeting. Moving on to the town manager's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too would also like to extend my welcome to the Scouts. I feel like it wasn't that long ago when I was sitting where you are, getting my citizenship and the community merit badge, and slowly working my way out to become an Eagle Scout. So best of luck to all of you in that endeavor, and thank you for being here tonight. Never hesitate to come on out to our meetings. I'll touch on the bachelor school a little bit later in tonight's meeting, but I'll start by talking about economic development. The job fair that was held, originally scheduled to be on the town green back on October 5th. Ultimately, that was rained out. Of course, we had beautiful weather on both sides of it, but it was rained out and rescheduled for later in the month. It was a tremendous success. We had, my understanding is, over 40 different employers that were signed up to be there, and we had scores on scores of job seekers coming on through, getting information about local jobs, and hopefully that results in a number of those vacant positions being filled right here in our backyard. The facade and business startup programs, you all know that the final allocations from those programs were announced a little bit of time ago. The final signed documents for those different awards were going out the door this week. I just finished up my emails today to notify everybody who's already been awarded that they can come sign those documents so that they can proceed with their various projects. On the grants side of our work, we are now pursuing, actually we've already applied for, it was a relatively easy application, around $50,000 that will help cover costs associated with overtime pay for police officers for speed enforcement, speed management, especially in our Main Street area, where, as many of you know, unfortunately in the past there have been fatalities. If awarded, this would allow us to conduct a significantly larger amount of speed enforcement around the town in the coming months without any additional tax burden for residents, which I know is important to everyone. Regarding, going off my script a little bit, Fit Together is a group that I know the selectmen are aware of. It's comprised of the town, the local YMCA, as well as Charlotte Hungerford Hospital and now Hartford Healthcare. And with those three resources together, the primary objective that they've been looking at in recent days has been turning the area over by the Mad River Dam into a park, a tried and true park. Right now there are trails there. They aren't marked for anybody I actually just hiked them this past weekend to check them out a little bit more. They aren't truly accessible to a lot of individuals who might be interested in walking through that area, and they aren't as well developed as they could be. So their goal has been to develop that into a true state park or state recreation area. They're hoping to put together, because they've been moving forward with this outside of really the town's sole purview, but with some town input. And they are hoping by the end of this month or the beginning of the next month to put together an info session that members of the public could attend to hear a little bit more about what their vision is for this area. The land is already owned by the state of Connecticut, so it's really just a matter of getting some dollars to make these improvements at that site and making sure that there's state support to make that happen and local support to make that happen. Regarding personnel, we have hired new individuals to fill 2 positions in our assessor's office. We've also hired a new assistant tax collector. Those individuals will start between November 15th and December 1st. And I will make sure that when they start that they are coming in to introduce themselves to you. And I'm excited to have full staffing in those departments. I know that some folks coming in to either discuss their assessments or assessment processes or pay different bills have had to wait longer to make that happen, and that's not what we want to see. So in the interest of customer service, this is a great thing. We are having a hard time, I'm going to be honest, and I know our Director of Public Works is here in the room. We are having a hard time filling other positions. I believe we currently have 4 vacancies within the Public Works Department, somewhere around there. And we have now 2 vacancies within our police department. Certainly, if anybody watching online today, if anybody here in the audience knows of candidates who might be well suited for these positions, please have them check out the town's website, have them apply. We're actively seeking candidates for these positions, and it would be a good thing to get back up to full staffing. Right now, actually, as of today, we had new online permitting software that went live. You can find links to it on the town's social media pages and on the town's website. We are still accepting paper applications for all of our permits for anybody who feels more comfortable doing that. But the online permitting software is something that's going to really revolutionize. It will come with its own hiccups, of course, as with anything new, as we work to iron them out. But it's really going to revolutionize the way that we internally handle all of our permits, make sure that they're getting to the next person faster. All of our permit applications require the review of multiple staff members within Town Hall. And it's going to make sure that the member of the public who made their application is able to follow along with where in the process their application sits. So in live time, you'll be able to send questions and comments from your house into a staff member at Town Hall, and the staff members at Town Hall will be able to give direct feedback back to the applicants, like I said, in real time as you go through the process. So that's a very positive development. In an effort to try and make sure that today went off without a hitch. The new website will go live on this coming Monday, not today, but 1 week from today. And I've already spoken a little bit about that. I'm very excited about the capabilities this new website will have while also saving taxpayer dollars. On the subject of our land use office, I have made a connection with Courtney Hendrickson, who's the executive director of Advanced CT. She's offered to supply the town with free training and free assistance in working through different processes related to streamlining land use approval. Whether it be permits or other types of review. Advanced CT is a statewide resource, a nonprofit, and it's great to have that in our back pocket. And I'm looking forward to working with all of the different land use boards, commissions, and of course our staff members to get a little bit more connected with that resource. The last thing I'll mention right now is we have reached a tentative agreement with the clerical union. This comes right at the heels of the approval of the supervisors union contract. I knew once we finally got everybody to sit around a table, we'd be able to get this done quickly. And it's my hope that everybody around the table at least seemed to be very optimistic about this agreement. It's my hope that within the next 2 weeks we'll have a ratification from the union and that this document will be able to come before you for final approval. So that's my report, but I'm happy to take questions that you might have. Oh, and tomorrow's election day. Please vote.
Yeah, I was wondering if you can give us an update on the reevaluation.
Yes, I received an email update from them just on Friday, and I can share some of that information for you right after this meeting.
No, I'm
Written report.
No, I'm asking about the reevaluation because I want to know if what I'm hearing from, some people out there is accurate or not. And so is our reval on time?
Reval's on time. Yes, that is a true statement. If you don't mind, I can pull up the actual email and read key portions of it to you.
I want to know that it's on time, that it's going to be filed, that everything's been completed, and that we're going to be able to certify it?
All of those things are true, yes.
Okay.
We're on track on all of those areas. So all standard residential inspections are complete. Approximately 90% of commercial inspections have been completed. Data mailers received indicating changes that require an inspection will be completed by the end of the day when I received this back on Friday. And at that point, the only outstanding field work will be photos that need to be collected. With data entry, which is kind of the next step, they're already 50% complete. They anticipate completion by November 21st. And there's a further update coming later this week on valuation trends, which I know you had also specifically requested.
Right, so was it due on October 1st, and did we have to file an extension, or when is the reval due?
My understanding, the reval isn't due on October 1st. The capture date, much like this is my understanding of it, much like the census capture date was April 1st back in 2020, and that's the day where you're supposed to say if somebody was living in your house on that day, even if they moved out on April 2nd. So the capture date for our revaluation is October 1st. What the value was on that date is the target that we were trying to meet of each house.
So the contract that we signed with the company and our former assessor, what dates did we have in there for it to be finalized?
I'd have to pull up the specific contract to tell you that exact date.
Right, because it's like the most important thing that we obviously do, so I want to know if, like I said, I want us to be accurate with it, and I've talked to you about this for the, past month or so in terms of the revaluation where we are. Without a certified assessor, you needed to find a, assessor to sign off on it. I just want to keep pace with that and make sure we're going forward in the timely manner.
Yep,
So-
that's been the goal the whole time.
Jack?
Josh, in the grant information, I'm just curious about, I know we were just applying, and I don't know what the criteria is for acceptance of a $50,000 grant to cover overtime pay for speed enforcement. So I understand, of course, we've been looking to try to find ways to slow down some of the traffic on Main Street and make it more friendly. But with the fact that we're already missing a couple police officers and that overtime often gets just pushed into overtime for every use, how can you intend to find ways to say that money is going to speed enforcement for overtime as opposed to the fact that we just need somebody else on that particular shift because we're down a couple of officers? Now, I recognize that you just applied for this grant, and we may not get it, right? It's a competitive grant, and so some significant discussion should be had regarding that. But I am curious about how we separate standard overtime from overtime that might be on the street to create some slowdown of traffic. Just curious, raising that question so that it's part of the concern that you have as you look at this grant application and accepting that grant application in the way that we can say, yeah, it was really worthwhile, or that money just went for overtime and it didn't do anything for the speed. So please keep that in mind.
Absolutely. A couple things to note. First, there's no matching requirement for this grant, so it's a 100% grant that if awarded would come to the town without any additional expenditures needed on the town's part. The second thing to note is that there are shift minimums for each of we have 3 shifts on our police department. So in order for this money to be used, a new individual, somebody above the current assigned individuals on that shift would have to come in and specifically be assigned to only conduct speed enforcement in order for this money to be used. So it wouldn't be permissible for us under this grant program to use the money for any other reason. It would have to be an additional body added to that given shift, and they could only conduct speed enforcement during that time in order for this grant money to be used.
Seems like a complicated process to keep track of.
A little bit, but the chief's done it before. We've used other monies. As you'll recall, we had a couple-week campaign of a little bit more speed enforcement, I think either at the tail end of the spring or early summer, just this past year, and we were able to keep track of it, no problem.
Can it be used for other things other than personnel?
This particular grant, my understanding is no. I might be wrong, and I'll certainly come circle back with you once I've looked into it more. But I believe that our application was for overtime related to speed enforcement.
Fair enough. When do you expect it to hear whether it's been awarded or not? What's your time frame?
I actually have to say, with all of the money that's circulating right now after the COVID period, I thought that response times would decrease, but I actually feel like grant response times are increasing so that more money's getting out the door. I would expect within 1 to 2 months at most.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? Josh, where are we on the charging stations?
Charging stations, my understanding is that the last electrical component inside needs to be installed, and then we are ready to go live.
Anything else? In correspondence, everyone received the letter from Mr. Lapointe, correct? Okay. Any other correspondence? Seeing no correspondence, boards and commissions, Steve?
Thank you, Todd. We have, if you look at your packet, we have some appointing and reappointing to do this evening. Regarding the Architectural Review Committee, the appointing authority is really the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there are 2 people who need to be put forward, or I guess have been put forward, and now we need to acknowledge the fact that Planning and Zoning has invited them to membership on the commission. So I'd like to acknowledge to the Planning and Zoning Commission that they have appointed Kate Sherwood Democrat, term to expire in December of 2024. And Charlene Lavoy, unaffiliated, a member, term to expire 12 of 23. And I can't remember what we've done in previous times. Did we vote to acknowledge that, or was it simply an acknowledgement? Simply acknowledgement. We're okay with that?
Yes, Steve, was there any potential conflict, the fact that Charlene is already a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission? And she's now sitting on a architectural review committee that reports to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Well, again, I don't know for sure, but I would put that right back to planning and zoning to deal with if it becomes an issue.
With my limited background, I do believe that it was actually an idea that was devised at a planning and zoning meeting to have a member serve on the architectural review committee. So that way there's a voice from the commission that can speak on the architectural review board. And then there's also somebody from the architectural review board who's a built-in liaison back to planning and
Okay,
zoning.
kind of a liaison positioning?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Good, thank you for that explanation. We have 2 reappointments to make, and I will make a motion to reappoint Lynn Kessler as a member of the Ethics Commission. He's a Democrat, and his term would expire in January of 2025.
I'll second.
Yeah, I'm sorry, they're reversed for some reason. Lynn Kessler is a Republican and Anita Garnett
Yeah,
is
he's-
a Democrat.
We'll do the one-for-one switch there, no problem.
I'll second it.
This is just acknowledgement, isn't it?
No, it's actual reappointment.
Reappointment. Got him in the wrong block. All right, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And I would also move to reappoint Anita Garnett, member of the Ethics Commission, Democrat, term to expire January of 2025.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Linda. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And finally, here's a reappointment, again, under the authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We acknowledge that Donna Davis is a member of the Architectural Review Committee, and her term would expire in December of 2025. So we'll acknowledge that as well. That would be the, and 2 resignations we need to acknowledge. Doug Fenninger, a member of the Architectural Review Committee. Term has expired, but he's resigning from that body. And also Thomas Sullivan, a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, is resigning, and we thank both of them for their service.
We need a second and a vote on Donna Davis. Is there a second to appoint Donna Davis to the Architectural Review Committee?
No, we're simply acknowledging what the Planning and Zoning has already done.
That's because they're the authority,
Yeah.
okay.
And that would be the report.
Just in addition on that additional page that we have as openings, we have openings on the Board of Assessment Appeal, Conservation Commission, Laurel City Commission, Economic Development Commission, and now we have also a ZBA alternate position opening. You had that as a second page in that.
Yes,
Just wanted to add the ZBA position.
thank you for that.
Thanks.
So volunteers necessary.
Thank you, Steve. Moving on to unfinished business. Item A, 22-58, FOI draft ordinance. Turn it over to Town Manager Kelly.
Thank you. So, at the last meeting, a draft ordinance was presented to you. That's the first of 3 meetings in our usual process for the adoption of a new law or ordinance. And at that time, it was requested of me that I refer back to the town attorney, Kevin Nelligan, who in turn has gone through the document as it was drawn up and has provided a series of proposed changes. So what you see before you tonight, this redlined copy, is a document as it has been reviewed by Kevin Nelligan. He did reference and speak at length with Tom Hennick, who is the education officer over at the Freedom of Information Commission. And actually, just last year was here in this room conducting training here with staff and other members of our boards and commissions. So certainly an expert on the subject. So the changes that have been proposed here, first, some of the proposed changes have been made for reasons of making it a little bit easier to follow. Rather than viewing easily accessible documents and viewing archived documents as separate categories, it's their recommendation that those be combined into a single category. And that category is to ensure that all documents can be viewed free of charge. And anything, obviously, that's easily accessible can be offered up either on our website and can be offered up by walking into any one of our offices at any time. Anything that's archived, there might need to be a little bit of work between our staff members and the member of the public in terms of when that document is able to be made available, but it's made available at the first of it physical opportunity, and it is free of charge under this amended proposal. The photographing or self-copying of documents remains unchanged. The printing of 8.5 by 11-inch copies provided by the town. This change is presented here as being 50 cents per page, mostly as an indication to the Board of Selectmen that you have an opportunity to set the rate to 50 cents per page. That is now permissible under the Freedom of Information Act. You can set any number between 0 and 50 for the 8.5 by 11-inch printed copies to be provided to the requester by the town. They've recommended 50 as that's the number that's adopted by most towns with an ordinance. Oversized printed copies provided by the town. This again is another standard number. Just when you calculate ink and paper and everything else related to oversized printed copies, you'd still actually probably be losing money with $6 per copy, believe it or not. Electronic copies provided by the town, this is struck, and as well as the production of new documents section. Instead, that's replaced by a section that's titled Computer Stored Public Records pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-211A, which states that A, an amount equal to the hourly salary, this is the fee that can be charged for computer stored public records. A, an amount equal to the hourly salary attributed to all agency employees engaged in providing the requested computer stored public record, including their time performing the formatting or programming functions necessary to provide the copy as requested, but not including search or retrieval costs. B, an amount equal to the cost to the agency of engaging an outside professional electronic copying service to provide such copying services, if such service is necessary to provide the copying as requested. And C, the actual cost of the storage devices or media provided to the person making the request in complying with such a request. All three of these provisions are taken verbatim out of the Connecticut General Statutes. This is what it is expected to be charged for the retrieval of computer stored documents. And we have added nothing to it at the recommendation of the town attorney and Tom Hennick at the Freedom of Information Act Commission. So it goes on to, instead of having an item under the table of fees that specifically references the production of new documents, a line is added beneath that says, nothing in this ordinance shall require the town's creation of documents not previously in existence. Fees shall be made collectively by the town manager's office and so forth. And it clarifies, there was some language in the final sentence in this section that I personally felt was unclear, and I ran this by the town attorney. So it's clarified to now read, new requests may not be made by a given member of the public until that individual has paid all fees associated with their prior request. So I think that instead of saying that no further requests will be accepted from the public until everyone's paid their fees associated, it clarifies that it relates to each individual as an individual requester. The date effective and all other sections of the ordinance remain unchanged. And this is what's been recommended by the town attorney. There's no action that needs to be taken tonight. Certainly, if there's any discussion to be had or questions that you'd like me to pose to Tom Hennick or the town attorney, I'm happy to take those back and bring them at the next meeting. But at the next meeting, that would be your third meeting, so that would be the opportunity for you to move forward with adoption on November 21st if you saw fit to do so. That's my report, unless there are questions or comments.
Yeah. I have some questions.
Okay, Jack, go ahead.
Shall I start?
Yes, sir.
Well,
Okay.
I think we have to take action tonight. I think in step 2, you have to take action to
Okay.
keep sending it.
Sure.
Procedure.
First, I know in a previous meeting, that I wasn't attending, but I saw in the minutes that there was a request to at least give us a report on how many requests are you getting for FOI?
Yeah.
How many different individuals, what organizations, how consistent are they? I don't see that part of the report here tonight. Is that something that you could provide us with?
Yes, that is actually something that's been previously requested. I do apologize that I don't have those numbers tonight, but I can guarantee them by the end of the week.
I am curious about how widespread the requests are. Not that it doesn't matter to me how widespread they are, but I'm just curious to know what the history of all this is.
Okay.
Okay. I also would like to, since my name, before I say that, I thought the point that Jerry Martinez made in his earlier remarks about not finding information on the website, if we're indeed, in fact, making viewable documents and having it available, is there something that's missing in our uploading of this information so public can see it?
That depends on what information you're looking for. As a standard course of business, Mr. Martinez had specifically referenced union contracts. There are very different takes from different towns on where contracts are stored, whether they're available on the website or you have to come into town hall to view them. Obviously, they are available for viewing in my office, in the town clerk's office, and so forth. But we, as a town, as a standard policy, have not had them posted on our website ever. So that's why they weren't seen. There's nothing wrong with posting them. There's nothing wrong with not having them on the website. I'm hoping that on the new website, which will have new systems of categorization and new systems of retrieval, that it'll be easier for everyone to find documents, and hopefully that will make it easier for us to upload in a reasonable and orderly fashion documents that are frequently requested by the public. So that's also something that we can work on, a frequently requested page for the documents that individuals seem to request on a routine basis. There are a lot of different ways to move forward with increasing transparency, which I think everybody up here is fully in support of. It's just a matter of how to go about doing it in a way that the town's staff time and dedication isn't overused and abused by, repeat requesters.
And that's why that report would be necessary to see that.
Correct.
I would like to take issue with the mentioning of my name as a reporter when it was said that they should get it for free. I don't think press should get documents, FOI documents for free. Press should pay for it, just like everybody else. And when we put in the word "the press," we don't know if that means Jack Bork's little newsletter, or does it mean the Hartford Courant, a New York Times, or does it mean a group of people who got together and wanted to publish a weekly document about whatever they wanted to put. So I object to the fact that a person, David, suggested that a reporter shouldn't have to pay. I think a reporter should have to pay. A newspaper should have to pay. And I don't like the use of the word in anything that says "the press," because I don't know what that means. So in looking at the document that we have received from the town attorney, we pay him a certain amount of money to give us technical and legal advice, and he's following the documentation from the Connecticut General Statute, and he's giving us his best advice. I see what he has given to us as a pretty strong way of going forward, with the exceptions that I have mentioned about certainly getting more information on the website so people can see it, uploading documents so that they can be found, and making that available as the amount of money towards this. It seems to me the reasonable copying costs and usage costs are laid out in a, I think, a legalistic way that we could follow, and I'd support that.
Josh, you want to talk a little bit about fee waiving?
Yes, so the Connecticut general statutes have very specific reasons listed for which fees can be waived. And the fees are waived at the discretion of generally the municipal CEO's office, so long as they fall into one of those very particular categories that are outlined in Connecticut General Statutes, Section 212D. So some of those involve a financial hardship from the requester, and it also includes any document that is readily applicable to the public's interest. So certainly I would think that a union contract would be readily of interest to the public to be released, just as an example.
Andy?
Yeah, the data, I'd asked for the data at the last meeting, and it's been a while, and I've even talked about data before that, so I'm a little frustrated today we don't have it. Because the data will tell us a story, and the issue with the story is that how many times have real estate agents asked for data from the assessor's office, because I know that happens, because I happen to get phone calls all the time on my father's property. So I know somebody has accessed data. I know that they go in and they access that. So how many times has that happened? Are there individuals that are requesting multiple times with people? Are there 10 people that only requested it once? Because I think that makes a difference in the discussion. The other thing that happens in FOIAs and whatnot is sometimes people use it to weaponize it. The information to go out and to criticize and to argue, about different kinds of things. And that will come in the data. And so when people in the public are listening to this back and forth, that we can point to things as to why we're why we're here right now with this discussion. Nobody wants to hide anything. We know for sure that everything is available to people, but there are people that are not, that, like I said before, what are they using it for? In today's world, our property records, for example, a long time ago, it was important to keep it in the town clerk's office because everybody had to keep everything straight in towns and whatnot. So when the telemarketer calls and wants to buy my house, I don't know that that's public information it's free public information, but when they get it so easily that way, should laws be changed because of scamming, because of fraud, because of all that, and go after people that are vulnerable to those kind of things. So I think this is the whole big discussion comes back to who's making the requests, where the requests are made. The waiver issue, like the waiver issue. I might be inclined if it was a once a year kind of a request, but if it's somebody, and the data will show this, if it's somebody that's multiple times asking for different kinds of information, then I don't think it's always waived, or that matter. So I will not vote to send this on to the third time. I think we need to hold it until we get the data before we take second step and then before we take third step.
Jonathan?
As a fellow selectman, I as well agree that, and so move that we do not go to the third stage of voting, and instead we save this for now. Because, the midterms are tomorrow. If we were to move it, it's just another reason. It might look political somewhat. It isn't, but it might look that way. And for a multitude of other reasons that I will not get into, it might just be the most ideal situation. So I put the motion on the floor.
Any further discussion?
What's your motion, John?
The motion to keep it in phase 2 for now, since this is night 2. And we'll, stay where we are instead of sending it forward for day 3 at the November 21st meeting.
But if we don't motion to send it, it
Yeah.
stays anyway.
Okay. Learning moment, I guess.
Yeah. So somebody would have to motion to move it to the 3rd meeting.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I would, I know the request has been made to include classes of people who should have fees waived or at least reduced. And I don't think we need to go there, or we should go there, because what about the people we've left out? How about first responders? I mean, that's a worthy group of people who could request information. What widows, what about widowers? So I think it gives us a disjointed kind of document, a disjointed policy if we do that. So I would favor the policy as presented by the town attorney.
Steve, I agree. The fact, every time you name a group, you're leaving somebody out. So leave it open. I agree with you.
No further discussion? Okay, moving on to new business. Item A, discussion on the resolution to go to referendum on increased Winston Waterworks project budgets.
We're having a bachelor school, did we move it?
Oh, I missed it.
Bachelor school was B.
Before we go to Jim, why don't you give a quick update on the bachelor school RFP?
Sure. So this past Saturday, this past Saturday, if you want to come up and get situated, we had actually first from 9 to 10:30. Thank you to those of you in this room who took me up on my offer to walk individuals through the bachelor school. I hope that it was enlightening for those of you who had the chance to see the inside of it, see the current state of the building, and start to envision what its future uses might be. So for those of you who don't know, the bachelor school was recently decommissioned as an elementary school here in town. It was used up until this past June, and the Board of Selectmen has now received 2 separate proposals for how to pursue redevelopment at that site now that it's no longer being used as a school. So one of those presentations, and at 11 a.m. on Saturday, this past Saturday in this room, we had presentations from these 2 firms. The first is from the Northwest Senior Housing Development Corporation, and they presented their case for the development of 32 affordable housing units being installed at the bachelor school. They went into detail about really what affordable means, and that's not low income. That's people, depending on the house size of your household, they might be making up to $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And beyond that, they are looking to perhaps turn over the remaining unused portion of the land at the school site to the Winchester Land Trust, or leave it in the town's hands. And they're hopeful to move forward with that at a purchase price of $300,000. On the other hand, we had our second proposer, George Nugent, who presented a vision to us of turning a portion of that building into a small factory for the cooking of food, as well as the packaging and shipping of that food nationwide. Hopefully to employ up to 50 individuals, and to have an amount of affordable housing at the rear of the building as it currently stands as well. He also extended a hope that the land behind the school that's currently unused could be used as open space, either to be held by the Winchester Land Trust or by the town. And he's proposed a purchase price of $25,000. I do know that the 2 proposers at the end of that session did have a bit of a huddle, and they were discussing, I think, what it would look like for either one or both of those proposals to be able to move forward in this town. I think that both proposers were lucky that we have people who are invested here in this town, want to make sure that whatever new developments they have are here in Winchester, serving Winchester residents, and perhaps even bringing in some new wonderful residents to our town. I'm excited to see if anything comes of their conversations. But the next step in our process is for the Board of Selectmen to take some of the feedback that was heard at that meeting and to process that, accept more public comment. And as Todd said at that meeting, we are still accepting public comment on the bachelor school process, either here at these meetings or by email. You can reach me at townmanager@townofwinchester.org. You can reach the mayor at mayor@townofwinchester.org. And we can share that feedback with the full board. But the next step in the process after more is considered by the Board of Selectmen will be for the Board of Selectmen to move one of those proposals, if they so choose, to a 824 referral with planning and zoning, or to make it known to the public that neither proposal will be moving forward within this process. So more discussion to be had.
Is there a timeline for that? Because the school does have problems and we don't want to go into the winter.
Right, and from my perspective as someone who's been inside that school, who's been working with Jim on figuring out how to best winterize and manage that property while it's not being used, the sooner the better. The longer that we have that in our hands, that's the more money out the door for various costs related to keeping it up. There are going to be, actually, I got a call from an individual at the state government talking to me about some of the environmental conditions at that site, and so the longer we hold on to it, the more likely it is that different components of that building are going to age out, that more work is going to need to be done. And I don't think, as much as our proposers are invested in our town, their patience isn't endless. I would much rather see some level of reuse at the site than none. And I think that we have at least 2 items that can be further discussed. So one way or the other, whether we're putting this back out to the public to request more proposals to come on in, or we're trying to move forward with this, I think it's in everybody's best interest to expedite that process.
So, when you do send out your RFPs, what's the process? Do you send them nationwide, or is it, because we just had 2 responses from locals.
Yep.
Could you just explain that?
Sure. So with this RFP, we had a press release that went out to all media across the state, and actually a couple of agencies that certainly operate outside the state borders. I know that information about the proposal was broadcast in different media levels by the press across the state. And I also know that it was picked up by Advanced CT, that nonprofit partner that I was talking to you about before, and was advertised to specific developers around the state by their agencies. It was also posted in the newspaper, The Opportunity. That's locally, so that's the Republican American out of Waterbury, and posted on our website and on our social media platforms. It is very pricey to post information in newspapers. To the difference between the Hartford Current and the Waterbury Republican, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of dollars, if not even maybe over $1,000, to post a small ad in the Hartford Current versus where we post right now. And to try and post in something larger like the New York Times is only going to be another factor in increasing costs. So at this point, we have not, I would say, conducted a nationwide search for a developer. That doesn't mean we couldn't in the future, but there are costs associated with it. As for next steps, certainly given that this relates directly to the prospective sale of town-owned land, that is a permissible item to have discussed in executive session if you should choose to list it as a reason for our executive session a little later, if you wanted to discuss it amongst yourselves.
Thanks.
No problem.
Other questions?
Josh, I have a clarifying question that I need to pick up from you. There was one point of discussion regarding the housing proposal from the Winchester Housing Group that said they were going to pay in lieu of taxes an assessed value of the property. And then there was another discussion point, I don't know where it came from, that they were going to pay a percentage, a quoted percentage of gross profit. And when I think you mentioned that, the speaker said, I don't know where that came from, and he mentioned a valuation figure that would be used and then pay taxes off of that. Have we got any clarification on where these two payments might be? Because I think it was also raised in the meeting that if a property was able to produce some continued tax improvement, that may be more advantageous, but if the other group was also going to be paying some kind of stipend in lieu of, I'd like to know what that is. Can you clarify that?
I actually called the development company today to try and get clarification on that. I wasn't able to catch them at the end of the meeting. They had left before I was made available. However, I was told I was not able to speak with David Berto, who did the presentation himself, who was the gentleman who was able to get up and speak on behalf of that proposal. However, I was told by Jocelyn Iyer, who's been working hand in hand with him, that he will give me written clarification on their official proposal, hopefully as early as tomorrow. I'm sorry I don't have that for you today. What is written down is that there would be a payment in lieu of taxes of 5% of the gross annual income of the housing
Where was that written
development.
down, on their
That's-
first proposal?
Yeah, I believe it's written on page 8 under section 3 of the responses. I actually have it
Okay,
right here for
that's
this
fine.
reason.
Right. So we do have that as an official document written by them in
Yes.
the original proposal.
That's right. So that's the original proposal, and that's what I had referenced at the meeting. David, I know that there were many hands in writing this proposal, so maybe the left hand simply was a little late in talking to the right hand on this particular phrase, because David is not responsible for the ultimate final sets of payments that would be made by this. He's really more in the upfront development of the site. And Deirdre Houlihan, DeCara, and others who are in the audience with us will be part of the board that oversees the ongoing operation. But that is what is said right here in front of us. It is on page 8 under section 3 of the responses, or question 3 of the responses. What was said by David Berto was that he expected a tax payment to be made that was based on an assessment and amended to reflect state affordable housing law.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what would be more advantageous to the town, but one way or the other, we will have one final written statement on what they're committing to. I expect it will be what's written down, and that David might have simply misspoken, but we will see.
Yeah, we do need clarification on that before we go
Agreed.
any farther with it.
Candy?
Yeah, I would say that either one of the proposals, or if we went out for a third one, requires a negotiation by us. Just because they give the proposal, or what they plan on giving the proposal, we, owning the building, can go back and say, well, no, this is what we want to happen there. You know, like I've been thinking, like what the neighbors said, maybe we can make them put a berm in. Maybe there can be some retention ponds for some of the water, although it is on a hill. But I think that staff, I mean, you and we have the town planner now, should start fleshing out, what does this mean? If we go with Mr. Newjames' proposal, what are all the things in here that have to happen? Well, we know that zoning's an issue. You know, where are the rest of the plans? What does the revenue look like? We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Where's the intersecting point on revenue on this? So staff, I think, really needs to start to put together, you know, what all this looks like. What are the pros and cons of the housing? Well, who's there? We know it's multi-generational. What services might they need? What kinds of fees or impact to, you know, the town would that be? Is it 300,000, you know, something we get up front? Is it over 10 years? Is it, how many years is it? So I think staff needs to take the two proposals and start putting out the pros and cons, so to speak, of them. I mean, I know all of us have been doing it in our heads, and we know we have the neighbors that have concerns up there. So what are the kinds of things that, if we took this proposal, we would want from them? If we took this proposal, what are the things that we might think we want from them? You know, because going forward, we're gonna need that kind of stuff. And then if we get to the point where we don't want anything, what does that mean? So if we don't do anything, how much longer does the building sit empty over the course of the winter? What is the status of the roof? You know, what's the roof doing up there now? Because I know the schools had said there were some issues that had to be taken care of right away. Where's the length of time for that? So where's all this information for that?
Yeah, to your point, the criticalness of the timing as I saw the proposal for the housing, they didn't want to take it over for another 2 years. And that would mean we would own the building and have to take care of it over that period of time. So we need to have all of that itemized by your staff to make sure that we have dating and timing, so we know, are we going to take care of this building for 2 years if we sell it to them? If the town agrees to sell it to them? What happens if, well, there's other issues we could talk about, but what happens if that organization changes? Does a subsequent organization takes over that organization, follow through? So there's still lots of questions in my mind, based upon the presentations. And as Candy has pointed out, we need that information before we can go farther.
Any other discussion?
So do you think you can have that information for us for the next meeting?
I do.
I think maybe we need to have maybe a work meeting on it. I think we need to have the planner come in, and come and start to compile all that and start talking about it, a separate meeting that we have to flesh through everything, like that, because these meetings obviously have a lot of other business on them, so I think it would behoove us to have this, have the planner meet with us, some afternoon or something like that, and talk about all the different pieces to it.
And just for personal reasons, I'd love to see this on the first meeting in December, as opposed to the next meeting, just for personal reasons. That gives you a little bit more time. It also gives us time to, if we need to have a special meeting just to talk about this with the information. So, doesn't necessarily have to be at our next meeting, but.
Because after us, it's still gonna take, at least 60 days to
Oh, yeah.
push this through with a sale of town-owned land, setting a referendum date, a town meeting date and all that, so it's still gonna be, we're still gonna be out there for a little while.
And in that process, we have to be maintaining the building.
Right, so I understand the heat and the water is shut off up there, but we still have, I remember, with some other buildings, other places, people were worried about what happens with vandalism, so we had a whole series of cameras that we had put on Hinsdale. I don't know if we.
The cameras are operational, and actually they helped us really stop some vandalism recently. I won't go into details on the case, but it was
So
very helpful.
we have them up
The
at
cameras are
Bachelor.
active.
Okay.
They're active now at Bachelor?
Yes, the cameras that were already on Bachelor are still active.
Okay. Were those the cameras that were originally on Hinsdale?
I am not sure.
I think these are the school cameras.
Yeah,
I think
they-
they left the school
What
cameras.
about the cameras that were originally on Hinsdale?
I'm not sure. I wasn't privy to the cameras that were originally on Hinsdale, but,
Because we had to maintain that building for a while.
right. Let me
Seems that
inquire.
that would be a good reuse of equipment that we already have.
Yeah, my guess is Hinsdale's using them right now.
I don't think so. They-
It's
I
worth
would guess if they
worth
were
checking.
temporary, yeah, in any case,
Find out
it is
anyway,
worth checking.
yeah.
I think we need to move forward with Bachelor. I think we need to get together and have your staff, with information from your staff. The neighbors are
Start
anxious,
putting that
and
together
I'm
and
sure that.
Absolutely.
Set the meeting in after you get some work done on it.
Okay.
Now moving on to new business, discussing the resolution to go to referendum on the increased Winston Waterworks project budgets. Jim?
And John.
No.
Is the mic on the table working, or do we,
It probably went off, the other one's much louder for the TV.
we got two of us?
It's on, the red light is on.
Just watch the feedback.
Does this seem to be? So I'll take the lead on this. Jim Rollins, Public Works Director, and I'm here with John Massicott. He's the chairman of the Water and Sewer Commission. He was out of the email chain today, so he's not up on the last of it, so I'll just kind of jump in and take over. So the water projects that the town, that the water department borrowed money for, was it a year ago or so, have been coming in a little over budget. One of the projects is nearing completion, and it's significantly over budget. We have two other projects that are just beginning, and we don't yet have the bid estimates. All we have is the engineer's estimates, or cost opinions. So we know we're gonna need, or we assume we're gonna need a little more money than we originally asked for authorization to borrow. Like Candy said earlier, all this money is being paid back by the water ratepayers, not the taxpayers. Sometimes the ratepayer, or all the times that the ratepayers are taxpayers, but it comes out of a completely different fund from the general fund. So we had authorization to spend up to 6.2 million on the water mains, on Hollibird, Case Avenue, Center Street, Greenwoods Avenue, T-Bolt Avenue, and then two water tanks, one up on Wallens Hill and one at the Crystal Lake treatment plant. So we're running a little over budget on the mains, the water mains. We don't know yet about the two tanks. We are expecting those bid results on November 15th. So we will be analyzing those to see if and how much we need to increase our authority to borrow in order to fund these projects. You know, we're still a week away from getting that information. Tonight, we're really here to kind of prime the pumps to get you guys up to speed. There's a relatively complicated set of rules that goes into the timing involved in getting approval to spend more money. We were working with the finance director and the town clerk's office to put together the calendar, and so we have to, and to complicate matters, once we get the bids on the 15th, the bid prices are only good for 60 days. So that's the reason for the push. We want to get this thing, if indeed we need extra funds, we want to be able to get that permission so that we can authorize the work to be done. If we don't do that, we'd only be able to do one of those tanks. It would be the Crystal Lake tank. So there's a lot of complexities to it, but the sooner that we will be, we have a meeting tomorrow night where we're gonna actually have to make the official motion to send this on to you, where it can be seen at your next meeting, and then from there it goes on to planning and zoning and a special town meeting where the public can voice their opinions. And then it would have to go to referendum, just like the first authorization for the 6.2 million was. At this point, we don't know. We're assuming it would be going from 6.2 to 7.5 million. And it's important to note that the way the funding mechanism works is each of these projects has a little bit different agreement as far as the funding, but there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 45% forgiveness in the loan. So let's say we did get the 7.5 million, we would get probably a forgiveness of somewhere over 3 million. In our current water rents, we just retired some loans. We paid them off, so we have that money ready to roll over, which is the timing for this project, to roll back over. So none of this, even if we ended up having to go to 7.5 million or whatever, we fully expect our current rates to be able to support that. We're having more trouble supporting the rates of our electricity. That's killing us. But the addition of these projects is built into the budget. So, we're gonna know more after the 15th when we get these prices. We'll be able to put together, a better draft or a dialed in draft of this. Some of this has been highlighted and there's some tentative numbers on it, but we'll be able to dial it in for for you to push forward to planning and zoning and further along in the calendar. That's kind of the highlights of it. Are there any questions? Candy seems to be the one following this the most. Do you have any other? Did this answer most of your questions?
I'm not looking, I'm talking more about procedure than I
Yeah,
am talking
understood.
about what you're spending.
Yep.
My comments before were about procedure.
Yep.
Because water and sewer are separate entities from the Board of Selectmen.
Absolutely.
And there was some question about that about a month ago. And so I just want to make sure that we are all clear that you all are making the request only for the credit
Correct.
from the town of Winchester, not what you all plan to do, and that ratepayers should be asking you all the questions, and your meetings, the public hearings and whatnot will be yours.
That's correct.
They're not ours.
That's correct. Yes.
So that's what I want to make sure that procedurally we're on top of, and that's why I think, even though you're here telling us this, I still think it was.
It probably is. Some of this was put into motion before we had finalized what this schedule had to be. And your attention to detail has helped us, because we did not actually have a motion and a vote at our meeting. So this is why it's helpful to have
I know
many.
you all work hard.
Yeah, it's helpful to have many.
Everybody works hard, everybody's intentions are
Yeah,
really good.
to have many
but
eyes on every
I've been-
project.
I've been worried about procedure.
Yes, and I'm glad you are, because it's not my strong suit. So thank you. So if there's any questions regarding, kind of what our need is and why and the process, I'll do my best to answer now. If not, I should have, a better answer for you at a later time.
Jim, I have a couple questions. First question is, you said some of these projects are coming in over budget right now. Was there any penalties for having a project bid, accepted, and then worked, and then not being finished within the budgeting expenditures?
So that's a great question. So the numbers that we used when we asked for the borrowing authority were the engineer's cost opinions on the job, not actual bid prices. And they were from the 2019-2020 era. So it takes a long time to push this project through the snake of bureaucracy and funding to get to the point of construction. So, for example, on the water mains, the engineer's cost opinion was 1.2 million. The low bid was 1.7 million. So we were $500,000 behind at the get-go. So then, as the time and the scope, just was exaggerated by a higher bid, the engineering costs went up. The inspection engineering, the documentation went up, and then we had several change orders, which you always do. Some up, some down, but there were two big ones. We had some unforeseen conditions where the water main on Case Avenue meets Main Street.
Yeah.
That was a $40,000 change because we had to completely redo what was in the state highway.
And that was not expected as part of the bid project?
No, we anticipate, our records, again, we're replacing pipes that were put in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
So they're over 100 years old. The records were a little sketchy. So what we thought we had isn't in the ground, isn't what we had. So that was a $40,000 change. There was, actually, I think I have a little better explanation of it. So we're actually currently on change order number 9. The first one was the Case Avenue and Main Street one. Number 9 was Holabird Avenue. We were under the impression that when the bridge was done, Holabird Avenue Bridge, that they extended the water main all the way up to the edge of where they stopped their pavement.
Right.
That wasn't the case. The water main that they did with the
That
bridge.
was the state's project. Wasn't it some of that the state project?
Yeah, that was a state-paid project. What they did was they extended the water main around the corner onto Whiting Street just a hair. I thought it went up, so we just started our bid for the job at a location, and we had to go back, and we didn't want to leave, 100 feet of old water main in the middle of a brand-new section. So we went in at a cost of $87,000, had to, do that one after the fact. And then there was change orders number 2 through 8 were just kind of miscellaneous stuff. You had to add a hydrant here, you had to, divert the water line around an unknown sewer line, those kinds of things that always happen. We did have a considerable credit because we didn't run into a single lead service line that needed to be replaced, and I think they budgeted like $30,000 for that. So there's some up, some down, but the net effect is, we're gonna be somewhere around $2 million for that job when we are originally anticipating 1.2. I did speak to the tank manufacturers, reps recently and asked them, okay, how stupid is this COVID gouging gonna be on your task, compared to what hit us on the water mains? And they told us that it hadn't really hit them as much. They're so specialized and dialed in that their supply chains were intact. So they're not expecting it to be as insane as these. We also had different engineers that tend to give us better cost opinions for the 2 tank jobs. It was the first time we ever used the engineers on these water mains. So, so we're hoping that the prices are gonna be significantly closer on the tanks. But again, we won't know until, the 15th.
Fair enough. I want to follow up on one of the words that you used. You said around $3 million forgiveness. What do you mean by forgiveness, and where does that come from?
So the money that we're using for the projects, these 3 projects, comes from the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So the money that we borrow, the state, the federal government, they work together through the Department of Health to put a lot of money into water and wastewater infrastructure. So the state will give us the ability, we borrow this, or we get a funding agreement, I think is the term, for the total cost of the project.
And Jim, I don't want to stop you. Thank you for your explanation. But we had the same kind of explanation when we did this bond issue back in May, right? You were talking about
Yes, same
forgiveness
exact
back
thing.
then.
Yeah.
So nothing has changed
Well,
in that.
so the only thing that's changed on that is the conditions of the agreements. The deal that we had closed, we got, it was a 46% forgiveness of the principal. We don't know yet what it's gonna be on the second 2 projects. You don't know that till you enter into the agreement. So it's really a convoluted way of doing it. I guess it's kind of like if you're buying a house, you think you bought at 3%, and by the time you close the deal, you're at 3.5%. You don't know all the factors. But at the moment, and there's a cap on where they'll pay 46% up to a certain amount, and then after that, they don't. So depending on where the prices come in, how much percentage of your forgiveness is gonna be. So they basically say, okay, you've gone through all of these steps, you're putting in a water system that's got good longevity to it, it's gonna be paid off long before it wears out, and the interest rates are usually quite low. I've been told.
And that forgiveness money comes back to the Water and Sewer Department?
Yes,
Account.
so essentially if we, just let's say it was a 50% forgiveness, just to make the math easy, and we borrowed, $10 million. At the end, the closing cost, your loan, you put everything together, and they say, okay, your principal amount on this is $10 million. You really only have to take out a loan for $5 million. The rest of it is just forgiven.
Fair enough.
And
Okay.
that's the intent of, the federal and state governments trying to offer good utilities, which they see as, essential for good communities, so.
Yep. Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Sorry
But
for the
again,
long-winded answer.
we went over this when we approved this bonding issue back for 6.2.
Yeah.
These were the same kind of explanations you gave back then.
Yeah.
And about the same kind of a percentages.
Yeah.
So all we're looking at here is not necessarily a brand-new thing, it's just additional money to help cover the additional costs that we're incurring because of higher expenditures, higher material costs, whatever. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Can I ask where you are with the 2 tanks? Is work just beginning, or?
The bids should be coming in on the 15th of November. So the design has all been done, it's been advertised. We've had the pre-bid meeting where contractors came and asked their questions, and we've been issuing addendums to their questions. And so the actual bids will arrive on the 15th. You know, it'll take us a few days to digest them and make sure that they're all good. The engineers have to go through them and make sure they compare apples to apples. So it's, you know, our hope would be to, you know, be able to, you know, get authorization to fund it, pull the trigger on both of these projects, and have them get started at least with their site work and preparation and survey work, you know, during the winter, so that they can, you know, hit the ground seriously come springtime, and then have them operational by winter of next year.
And just to re-clarify, the bid that you open on the 15th is only going to be good for 60 days.
Yeah, that's when you put the bid out, you give it a 60-day, so you can go through all the paperwork that's associated, and if any curveballs come in, you have time to adjust it. But with these days, it's tough to get much more than that because prices are changing just so rapidly. So we're gonna know a lot more after the 15th. We're keeping our fingers crossed that, you know, we may not need much more. I think the bids, you know, the engineers' cost opinions on the tanks are closer than what we had for the water main, so, but we'll see. I guess it depends on how hungry or unhungry the contractors are.
Any other questions? John, Jim, thank you. Moving on to item B, 22-59, refunds as recommended by the Collector of Revenues.
So you have in front of you $3,525.96 worth of proposed refunds, all of which are for motor vehicles and all of which are due to certificates of correction. They've all been reviewed and brought forward to you by our Collector of Revenue, Ashley Kelsey, and she and I both recommend to you that you authorize the refunds as presented.
Can I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the refund recommended by the Collector of Revenue in the amount of $3,525.96.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item 11, citizens' comments. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please give your name. John?
John Weird, 16 Superior Street. I noticed in about the last 3 weeks since I come in here for several meetings, the drinking fountain's not working again. And it's been working for about the last 4 years. I just wonder if there's a reason why.
What's not working, John? I can't hear you.
Huh?
I can't hear you. What's not working?
The drinking fountain.
They were turned off for COVID, right?
The water fountain right there?
No, this was, it was not cool. I was in here. and-
Yeah, I saw that working actually not that long ago, now that you say it, if my memory's serving me right. So let me look into it. I wasn't aware that it wasn't working right now.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's not.
Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thanks, John.
Anyone else? David?
David LaPointe, 11 Hillside Avenue. In regards to this ordinance that is being put forward, it falls under Article 3, Board of Selectmen, Power of the Selectmen. Previous to this, there was a policy. Under state statute, and under our charter, it is the preview and the powers of the selectmen. Article 3, Section 302 ordinances. The Board of Selectmen shall specifically have the power to ordain the following: A, B, C, D, E. E is charges and fees under the charter. The Board of Selectmen may set charges or fees to be made for services by the town or the execution of powers vested in the town as provided in this charter. Town manager put forward a standard operating procedure, which is posted, and all of the department heads have this in their office. I'm glad that the town manager acknowledged the state statute, which specifically says, as he stated, and as Tom Hennick, I went through that same class that he had here when I was chairman of the Board of Education, because we requested it, and it was a very good class, that you can walk into any office here in Town Hall, and as I did with the good zoning enforcement officer, Michael Skankoff, I asked him for information. And he said, oh, of course, I'll oblige. I said, I just want to look at it, and I do not want a copy. So he obliged me and said, come back the next day. I failed to go back the next day. So a couple days went by. He had had a conversation with you, the town manager, and you told him, don't give it to him. You told him, send him up to my office, and he could look at the information then. So in light of what the statute says, it seems that we have a different policy here, and it's not in sync with the policy of the state statute. So Michael was ready and willing to give me that information. In fact, on that day he was, but it was actually past his hour that he was to be here. So he was saying, I gotta go, and I said, no problem, I can come back tomorrow. So things change. And now, all of a sudden, you're doubling the fee for actual copies. It originally was 25 cents a copy in your original proposal, Mr. Town Manager. Now, I wasn't privy to the draft that you selectmen, and I realize why, because it's legal advice. That legal advice can be requested, it was requested by others, and it's not privy to the townspeople until it's brought forward at a public meeting, which it was. Subsequently, what I'm saying is you've doubled the fee now. You don't want to recognize senior citizens. You don't want to recognize veterans or disabled people. I will recognize widows and widowers, and you're absolutely right, and it should be. And the press should be recognized up into $10. If it goes over $10 for all of those protected groups in this country, they're not just groups, okay? They are protected groups, okay? People who are protected under Social Security that was passed by the Congress and signed by President. So all of these groups should be honored. They shouldn't be told, oh, well, we should then, do it for everybody else then that comes before us. No, these are honorable groups of people. The press especially, because that's how we find out about corruption, or we should be, on both sides of the aisle. So I take great umbrage in anyone trying to say that, oh, these people are trying to get a special privilege. No, it's an honor, and they are tax-paying citizens, and as Jerry said, they should be entitled to it, and you should stand up and support it. And, you know, this ordinance should go forward with those amendments, okay? Because freedom of information is a right. It is not a privilege, and it's not something that should be charged, okay, for anyone. And by the way, you never answered my question in regards to the letter that I sent you at the last meeting, and I publicly gave it to all these selectmen. I asked you specifically, and I did it nicely, to refund my money because my money was taken from me illegally. And if I go before a judge, they're going to hear the law, they're going to hear the actual annotated version of why that law was passed in 1975, and also that it was never passed here by the selectmen, okay, under the charter. So this law has to be made in effect. And it should be required that a refund should be granted, as you just did, to those good taxpayers
Todd, we're at 4 minutes.
who were overcharged on their motor vehicle taxes. So I have not received a answer in regards to my letter, in regards to my refund, which those charges, and by the way,
David, you're well over time.
Yes,
Start to wrap up
and
your point,
I want
please.
to let you know that I was overcharged just this past week on the 2nd for 50 cents a page for these 3 documents, and it should have been 25 cents a page, but I paid it anyways, and as I rightfully do all the time. But thank you for letting me speak, and I hope you do the right thing, because not only am the people watching, but God is watching, more importantly. So my words shouldn't be honored in the sense that his words
All right,
override
David,
all of ours.
thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry, did you want to speak?
I don't know after that. First of all, once again, Jerry Martinez, 117 Preston Road. I just want to give a shout out to these 13 young men who lasted an hour and a half. There's a lot of adults in this town who couldn't even go the distance for a half hour. So I just want to, if they're watching, you did a great job, and I hope you learned something. Secondly, what I'd like to do is I'm in full agreement with Selectman Perez. I think that this concept of having special rates for various groups can be abused very quickly. And although it sounds like a small group, as Mr. LaPointe says, that group could easily expand and could actually wreak much havoc. I firmly believe that as the town puts out more documents in PDF format for people to download, that over time we'll reach a balance so that it won't cost the town that much, that people will get the information that they need, and it'll be an automated system. We live, as I said before, we live in the year 2022. It's ridiculous that we have to do all this paperwork, and it's very inefficient, and it affects the taxpayers. One other note, but I do want to make a comment that I'm in disagreement with Selectman Perez, that the whole idea of a policing aspect to this could be unconstitutional. And just the fact that the statute strikes me as being unconstitutional, with the fact of having income verification or whatever. I can't remember what the actual statute was. But I think, in all fairness to everybody who's playing here in the town, make it one price. Try to get as much information on the website as possible, so we're not paying for that. And I know Josh is working on a number of the systems to get that rolling. So the more we have, the more we can work with, without having to trouble your staff, which I know is the big issue. One final note: you were saying you're having a tough time trying to get the announcement of the bachelor school, for requirements or for your people to be interested. When you look at the minimum cost, I think the new jam offer was $25,000. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for like a $500 investment with the Hartford Current, that's only like 2%. So it's actually minimal. It's a good investment for the long run. And plus, once again, using the internet, I'm sure there's various online sites you can go to post this information, even our own website for that matter, and set up a Google AdWords campaign. And it'll be much cheaper than doing that. So I hope that this town, as we move forward from 2022, as we reach the end of 22, we actually start to look, how can we put more things online? How do we digitize? And with Candy talking about as much data as possible, so we can understand what we're actually doing here, instead of just sort of flying by the seat of our pants as we've done in the past. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and good luck.
Thank you, Jerry. Louisa, John? Nope. Moving on to Selectmen's comments and reports. Anyone? Jack?
Bob, you want to go first?
Sure.
You go first.
All right. I have a bunch of things. First, I hope to see a lot of people on November 11th down at the cemetery at 11 o'clock. It's been a long time tradition of the VFW to be down there. Hopefully we'll have a lot more people than we sometimes do down there. That would be something that would recognize our service members of every war and that we've had. Last meeting we had a vote on transferring money in the capital account, and we probably need to rescind that, or unless it's not happening, because that couldn't we couldn't do that. Let's see, road bonding, I know that we've talked about that in the beginning, and we were talking about this time, about having a plan for that. I know you gave us a written document of the roads and stuff, but where are we on this bonding? What are we doing? What's, will we be in place for the spring? Where are we for that one? I had let's see, the online software, I'm glad it's online, but I didn't know it was until I read it on Facebook. So maybe somebody could shoot us an email as a Board of Selectmen and let us know these things are coming online so that we're aware of that. Two things, recreation lights, went before the Recreation Department from our small committee to relight Walker Field, because we're looking at all of the fields and analyzing which would be the best one to do. So the rec lights will going forward with Walker Field. I'm starting to write a general outline of a bid and what we need in that, and then I will turn that over to Mark Douglas, who does all the bidding in the Recreation Department, to try to get that moving through. We've had, different bids in there, and we just have to make sure that we have the specs correct, because one vendor gave us an estimate on a wooden pole, one gave us on a fiberglass pole, one gave us on a metal pole, and then we just need to have, light it all up at all times, so, or for maybe high school soccer level, for the rec ones. And then the last thing is Suckerbrook Dam. There's been a lot of garbage over the edge. I sent out an email yesterday after a resident in the area had alerted me to it. Somebody had thrown a couch over the bridge. There's a lot of boxes down there. There's a lot of graffiti. I paint over the graffiti that's on the side we all drive by, but there's tons of graffiti down below. But the main issue is the amount of garbage there. So I contacted the people I know at the dam division at the state, and they're gonna take a look into seeing if they can get that couch out of there and some of those other things, because otherwise it just keeps building.
Jack?
All right, and this is not piggybacking on you. They're already written down in my reports here that I would like to mention. Regarding Veterans Day, at 2 p.m. at the Soldiers Monument on Crown Street, we will have it open from 2 to 4, and there'll be a reading of the Gettysburg Address. We've been reading the Gettysburg Address at the monument on Veterans Day for, this will be the 4th year, I think. So that's public, and we hope people can attend. If you haven't been up there and seen the new windows, the town has been very supportive in getting those in, and it's been a real improvement in what we're seeing as airflow in the building and even the outside look of the building. And the second, and not piggybacking, but it's on my list here, I am curious, we're at a point where, road work is not going to get done in the next 30, 60 days because we're heading into winter and things will be shut down. I would like to see on a maybe quarterly time period what has been done on the roads that we had projected and told taxpayers back in May when they paid for the awarded work improvements, exactly what has happened over the period of time, if it's still working on bonding and getting all of that, or but there should be a report on at least a quarterly basis of, okay, these roads have been done as part of that project. These roads were scheduled to be done, but we didn't get to them, and they'll be done at this point. I think with all of the discussion that we had back in May and the approval of the bonding issue, we need to let taxpayers and residents know what has transpired over a period of time. And it's been since May, and I don't know what's been done. And as Candy has said, something about bonding and getting all of that prepared, but what actually has get done in construction? I'd like to see that. And it seems to me that would be a good report to have December, and then another one in May, and quarterly reports, just to keep us informed.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd just like to remind us that there was a huge problem in Norfolk a couple of days ago with a spill of gasoline. I was talking with a resident, we were talking about similarity between Norfolk and Winston in terms of topography. I'm sure that accident is being investigated, and I'm sure some of our emergency responders were on the scene helping out our neighbors. But while it's being investigated, we don't know if speed was an issue, if driver error, if there's a problem with the truck. We don't know those things yet. But we were talking about the area coming into the town from the west, had that long, long downhill, and the chance for speeding to occur. We've all observed it happening. But especially for 18-wheelers to come into town speeding. And you talked about the $50,000 for the police to look at the issue of speeding in town here. I would hope that we look at that particular area if the chief would spend some time considering how we might work with the state to, I don't know, identify warning signs for trucks coming down that stretch, or what. But I just think it's a worthy topic for the chief to be considering, as especially if we get this money for speeding enforcement.
And the speed does go from 50 to, I believe, 30, right
Very
around there.
quickly.
Yeah.
It's like going over a cliff.
Anyone else? So I just have a couple of things. One, once again, thank Troop 1027 for coming in today. The rec department had a very successful trunk or treat. There were 32 vehicles and over almost 500 children participated. Yeah, it ran a little long. And then lastly, on October 19th, former Winston resident Daniel R. Smith passed away at 90 years of age. Mr. Smith was a true Winston hero, a notable figure in Winchester history, as he was mentioned in the Winchester 250 presentation. Mr. Smith served as an Army medic in the Korean War, and on August 19th, 1955, during the height of the flood, with great disregard for his own personal safety, Mr. Smith leapt into the raging floodwaters to rescue a man who was attempting to save a woman when 5 people fell off of his skiff. Sadly, the female was swept away and perished, but Mr. Smith was able to save the male. I think that it would be appropriate for the board to consider honoring Mr. Smith for his heroic actions in 1955 through either the consideration of a plaque, a memorial, or under sections Ordinance 164 for naming of a street, or section 193, the naming of a town facility. I think that in the coming meetings, we should consider those actions and possibly name a naming committee.
Would we be looking at anybody else that was instrumental in the 55 flood too?
I don't know. This came up because he recently passed.
Well, yeah, no, read the articles and stuff.
Right. That would probably be on the naming committees in their purview, whether or not it should go forward. Anyone have anything else? All right, can we have a motion to go to executive session to discuss contracts and the possible town-owned property?
So moved.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there a second?
Well, yeah, I have a question. On our agenda, it says contract negotiations.
Yes.
So the town-owned property, we're,
Didn't we bring that up when we were talking about?
I had mentioned that we could discuss it privately if the board so chose. It doesn't have to be on the agenda, it's whatever the board motions at the time.
all right, well, we should also notify when we're doing that. Yeah, we'd rather not talk about town-owned property yet.
Okay, it is getting late, so we can just discuss the contract in executive session. All in favor? No labor attorney?
No.
Okay.
We going in the other room?
Yep.
Yep.
And time is 8:57. Yeah, we need to get somebody tall to fix the clock.
Yeah.
Stand on the bench.
No. That bench is over
Yeah, I would say
there.
not that bench.
That's what Jim Rollins did the last time we changed the clock.
I did it for my tippy toes once, and I think I dislocated a shoulder.
Oh, that clock's gotta go back, right?
Yeah. Hey, Glenn, you're tall.
I'll work on that.
Just don't stand on the thing by yourself.
Yeah.
Or, you know, make sure you shut off the camera so it's not on film. OSHA doesn't like that stuff.
Who's doing that?
I'll take care of that.
Oh, I got my books.
Just so you know, Channel 194 was broadcasting. According to people watching on the outside.
Got your minutes all done? Yes, sir. What else would you do for an hour, right? At least we got like Cartoon Network or anything on that? We have returned from executive session. It is 9:47 PM. No actions will be taken. Steve,
I move we adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jonathan. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. See you in 2 weeks. So. I got this. Good, yeah. This I got. I'm not gonna mention any words on it, but this I got from them.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
This is excellent, and I think we should make it our